Our middle son absolutely loves Philly cheesesteak. So today, we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to make Philly Cheesesteak Sloppy Joes.
For this recipe, you're going to need 1 small onion chopped, 1 bell pepper chopped, 1 large clove of garlic chopped, 1½ pounds of hamburger meat, a ½ teaspoon of beef bouillon powder, a ½ cup of water, 2½ tablespoons of ketchup, 2½ tablespoons of W sauce, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, salt and pepper to taste, provolone cheese, and hoagie rolls. So first we're going to start with our onion. I've chosen 1 small, just white onion, and I'm going to just chop this into small pieces. I don't want huge chunks, but I don't need them minced, so I'm just going to chop through, and then we'll set these aside. Next, we're going to chop our bell pepper. Now today I'm using a yellow bell pepper. Green works fine. Red is usually a little bit sweeter, but I'm just going to cut this out, and you want to scoop out the inside and make sure that you get all of those seeds out. I've got the inside all cleaned out, and now I'm ready to chop my bell pepper. I'm just going to cut it in half, and when you have waxy vegetables, if you'll cut it from the inside, it makes it a little bit easier. And I'm just going to cut this into kind of big julienne strips, and once I get those all cut up, I can turn them sideways and I can cut nice easy chunks. I finished chopping these, and if you'll notice, they're nice big chunks, and I'm just going to sit these in a bowl until we are ready to saute. This recipe calls for fresh garlic, so I'm just going to put the cloves under the blade of my knife, give it a good smash, and that's going to help me to get that paper covering off the outside just very easily. Now this recipe calls for 1 large clove of garlic. Mine are kind of small today, so I'm going to be using 2. And once I have the paper off the outside, I'm just going to cut through these. I do not want to mince them, but I do not want giant pieces either, so I'm just going to give them a nice chop. Now today I'm using an electric skillet. It just works really well, so I'm going to turn it on and get it hot. And in my electric skillet, I'm going to melt butter. I am going to be sauteing these vegetables, so I want to drop it in, let it cover the bottom, and then in go my peppers, my onions, and my garlic. Now once the butter starts to melt, I'm going to go ahead and drop in my vegetables, my onions, and my peppers and garlic. Now I'm going to cook these. I want them to just start to soften up, but I do not want to cook these all the way through. Now you can add a pinch of salt to these, and it will help to kind of get that liquid out a little bit quicker and kind of speed up the sauteing time just a tad. Okay, so my peppers and onions have been sauteing for about 3½ minutes, and if you notice, they're starting to soften, but they're not translucent. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these from the pan. I do need to work with my hamburger meat next, but I want to reserve these for later. Now if you notice, I left some of the onions down in the bottom of the pan because I am going to be browning my hamburger meat, and that adds a little flavor. So I have 1½ pounds of hamburger meat. I'm just going to crumble it up in here and brown it, and once I get done, I will drain the grease off and we will be ready to continue on with our recipe. I am going to stick the lid on top. That will help this brown off just a little bit faster. This has been cooking, and I've been continuing to stir, and if you'll notice, the hamburger meat is now nicely browned. So I am going to turn the skillet off, and we're going to drain the excess fat. I have drained the hamburger meat, so now I'm going to add it back into my skillet. A little fat is okay, you just don't want these to be very greasy. I've turned the heat back up on my skillet, and I want to get this nice and warm. And now we're going to add our ½ teaspoon of ground black pepper, our broth powder, a half cup of water, and then we're going to add our gooey ingredients, our ketchup, and our Worcestershire sauce. And lastly, the sweet, we're going to add a tablespoon of brown sugar. Now, if you don't like this really sweet, just decrease the amount of brown sugar that you add. Once you have this mixed really well, this is where you'll want to add a little bit of extra salt. And if you're not sure how salty it is, go ahead and just give it a taste. But we've made this several times. We know we always like to add a little bit more salt. And then we're going to add back in our peppers, onions, and garlic. You just want to mix these ingredients in really well so that you kind of have the veggies evenly distributed in your meat. And then we're going to be ready to simmer. Now this is going to create a lot of steam, so you can take your lid, turn it a quarter turn, and that will allow all that extra steam to escape. Now I'm just going to let this simmer for about 5 to 7 minutes. I want most of the liquid to go ahead and evaporate out because I do not want this to be too runny. Juicy is good, runny is bad. And just give it a good mix. If it needs a little bit longer, just let it go a little bit more. Now this is a really good time to go ahead and taste your meat again. This is salt and pepper to taste, and I think we do need just a little bit more ground black pepper and a couple more pinches of salt. You know what your family likes, you know what your personal taste is. And now that I have that all mixed in, I just want to check and make sure that most of my liquid has evaporated, and I think we're ready for cheese. I have kind of evened my meat out in my pan, and now I'm just going to add some slices of provolone cheese. And I'm going to cover this up long enough for the cheese to melt, and then we'll be ready to plate up. To serve this, you just want to pile a good amount of meat up on your hoagie roll and make sure you have plenty of cheese. This is a delicious sandwich. However, you need to be aware that it's messy. So this is one of those things you may want a fork for. And if you want to carry this for lunch the next day, it's even better. Just make sure that you separate the bread from the meat when you're packing your lunch. And this is an amazing way to have Philly cheesesteak that's not really Philly cheesesteak. I hope you enjoyed today's recipe. If you would like for these to continue, be sure to like, comment, and share. Thanks, guys.